Good time of day to all of you, my friends, here on the Internet Chess Club. This is Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky. Alright, guys, so, well, my live show, you've seen this before, right? So please acknowledge that you're there, and let's have a chat about recently concluded and also ongoing tournaments. Okay, добрый вечер. Very nice. Good evening, everyone. Alright, I mean, I don't really intend to have this show as a full recap show of any of the tournaments I'm going to talk about. There simply isn't enough time. You probably saw the results of the Zurich event. Now, the Zurich event is a special event. It sort of came to replace the Monaco tournaments. If you remember, for a long time, maybe for 20 years, the Dutch businessman and chess patron Hou Yifan made it possible for top players in the world to travel to Monaco, prime location of course, and play in an exciting, interesting event which was not rated. So what players did then, they would play blindfolded. I call it semi-blindfold because you look at the computer and you have a chessboard in front of you and also the opponent's last move. And one game played at a time. It's not that difficult in terms of keeping the position in your head. Of course, it's difficult to play good moves when you're facing the best opposition. Well, actually, games were quite good, and Kramnik played there, Anand, all the top players. I'm not sure Kasparov ever played there. The second part of that Monaco tournament was always a rapid event, which was also, pretty good games. I believe that the quality of games doesn't really suffer a whole lot with diminished time controls. I don't buy into this thing that players necessarily need 3 hours each to play a complete game. Anyway, but it's all in the past. Well, he died and sponsorship obviously dwindled out. That's how it is. Those of you with very good memory and also with a lot of years behind your belt might even recall those tournaments in the United States, right? I'm trying to recall the Lone Pine tournaments, of course. They were also sponsored by a private individual and a famous inventor. And unfortunately, as it goes, well, the descendants, the heirs, they don't necessarily want to continue the tradition. So, those tournaments last, for as long as there is the man behind them. That's how it is. Anyway, and about the Zurich tournaments, a new individual came to pick up the slack, and that's the Russian businessman Alex Skvortsov. Obviously a very rich man, but well, good for him. He's a great connoisseur of fine arts, and in his tournaments, which are held in Zurich, Switzerland, there are always a great cultural program over there. At the opening ceremony, you have the great performers playing classical music, violin, cello, all that. Chess players respond in kind, well, by playing interesting games. Skvortsov himself is not a bad player. He's in a high amateur rank, I would say. And when he comes up in the beginning of the tournament to play one of the invited grandmasters, it's actually a fairly interesting game. This time he faced Anand. It's for the show, of course. Anand developed a Russian attack. No live show for you tonight. Oh, yeah. Your internet is not working. Oh, well, too bad. Well, yeah, I think it's possible to watch this show in tape delay. Well, I'm using the old term. Probably my youngest listeners wouldn't even understand what tape delay means, but okay, it's in recorded already format. But obviously, it's better to watch it live because you can ask questions and, well, we interact. That's the whole point. Anyway, so about the Zurich tournament. It's not the first year. Skvortsov started with just having a match. That was maybe 5 or 6 years ago between Kramnik and Aronian. That was an interesting match. And now he settled on a format of shorter than regular tournaments. I don't think he ever had 10 players. Maybe in the past he had 6, now it's 8. And what they do, they play two kinds of chess competition, two disciplines. One is what Mr. Skvortsov calls the new classical, which is 45 minutes with the 30-second increment to each player. Just twice as short as the shortest FIDE time control for classical is, which is 90 minutes with the increment. The second part of the event is a blitz tournament, but now the blitz is twice as long. It's 10 minutes with 10 seconds. So what we have a slow rapid and slow blitz, or fast classical or fast rapid, whichever way you call it. The games played with the longer time control, with the new classical time control, are given more weight. When you win a game, you get 2 points. When you make a draw, you get 1 point. I might agree with Dimitrios here that indeed, less time, it's more spectacle, more decisive games. But I think it happens not only because of shorter time control. Well, chess players don't want to admit it, but the fact is that these days everything depends on your rating. All your future invitations, all World Championship qualifications, rating plays the most important role. Therefore, you have to protect your rating. That's how it is. And that's why time and again we see in our main tournaments, London Classic or Sinquefield Cup and some others, we see the players are somewhat on the side of caution. And that's perfectly understandable. Nobody wants to, just crash and burn, and lose, 20 rating points. It's harmful. Obviously, good players, they will probably come back. We've seen those comebacks in Vasily Ivanchuk many times. Coming back after losing a lot of rating points. Alexander Morozevich, and recently we've seen this at the very top. We've seen Fabiano Caruana losing some rating points and then getting back, and Anish Giri and all of these guys. But anyway, when you have a tournament like this, it basically does not fit into any kind of definition of official competition according to FIDE, then the ratings simply don't count. These days FIDE counts classical, rapid and blitz, but what Skvortsov has for his tournament doesn't fit into any of these categories. So the tournament, actually unrated. That's fine. Now, for the past 3 years, and that's the 3rd year in a row, the winner of the tournament is Hikaru Nakamura. Well, maybe this time control suits him better, eh? Well, perhaps, FIDE, Skvortsov, pulls a lot of weight. He's a powerful man with his connections, and he said in his interview that he's talking to FIDE people, and of course we know that FIDE has reached another stage of turmoil, and now we don't know if Kirsan Ilomzhinov is even going to be president. Well, there is some kind of internal coup, going against him with the people that basically were his henchmen, for many years. Things happen, this is politics. To me, like when you see a guy like Bill O'Reilly losing his job, a departure of Kirsan Ilomzhinov, even if he is forced to depart, would not surprise me a whole lot. But anyway, now if it happens, it happens. A lot of players, and I would particularly mention Alexander Grishchuk, long time ago stated that they prefer shorter time controls. Grishchuk elaborated and he said you get to play more games and therefore you'll be willing to take more risks. Obviously from Grishchuk's point of view, he's going to be down to 5 minutes anyway, no matter how much time you give him to begin with. I understand that the players are looking out for their own best interest as well. But as it goes, it's always been that the best players in the world are also the best players in all possible disciplines, including rapid and blitz. I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of shuffling of the deck should time controls shorten to squarts of parameters, 45 and 30-second increment? I don't think so. No, maybe it'll somewhat accelerate the dropout of Kramnik and Anand and Topalov, but Topalov already dropped out. The older players, but accelerated, but certainly not reverse anything, in my opinion. Alright, so Nakamura won it again. Fully deserved win for Hikaru, and he redeemed himself for somewhat bleak performance at the US Championship, where he simply could not stay in contention for first place. And it's not just Wesley So. Well, Hikaru was behind some other players, behind Anishuk and Akobian, and obviously he wasn't very happy with his play in that tournament. But Hikaru is a warrior, and best for him. Alright, he may be upset at the end of a bad game or at the end of the tournament that it didn't go well for him. Then usually he hops on a plane and travels to the next tournament. And in between his flights, during this layovers, he plays Blitz online and all that, so he fully recovers. It's good to be young and strong, of course. So he came 2 days later to Zurich, and oh yeah, forgot to tell you. First they had an unofficial Blitz tournament, which didn't count for the overall score. It was just for to determine the pairings. No, to give the top players to get spots in the better half of the tournament draw, so they get an extra white. So Nakamura got that, and as luck would have it, he would start the tournament with games against lowest rated players. And in both of in those games he won both times. So who were the lowest rated players? The local entrant Yannick Pelletier, a known grandmaster from Switzerland, but 25-50 strength about. And the young Russian 20-year-old Grigory Aparin. So that kid actually earned his place to be there, because some months ago, I don't remember when already, too many tournaments, he won the Nutcracker tournament in Moscow, which was also, I think, some kind of a combination of classical and rapid. And he represented the team of youngsters, younger players, versus the team of veterans. And over there, his main competitor was Shirov that time, but Aparin managed to finish ahead of Shirov, and therefore earned himself an invitation to Zurich event. This year's event, of course, was dedicated to memory of Viktor Korchnoi. So anyway, Aparin is there. Now other players I will mention. Skvortsov, he's not a young man himself. So he grew up playing chess and watching the best players at that time, Kramnik, Anand, Gelfand. So he knows these guys personally. He loves them. He loves their chess. So when Maxim Vashyevograf dropped out because he had to start a tournament in GRENKE tournament, which we will talk about a little bit later, the one that's ongoing now, and it's so instead of MVL, Gelfand was invited at the last moment. As it often happens, the player who gets the last minute invitation to a tournament does well. And when I saw in this preliminary Blitz tournament, Gelfand played fantastic. He actually was leading that stage with 4 points out of 5. Then I think he slowed down a little bit and he was caught by Nakamura, but still Gelfand's final score in that preliminary Blitz was great. But somehow Boris kind of spent himself doing this. He really didn't have a good tournament when it came to a new classical or to that fast rapid, 10 minutes and 10 seconds. He finished ahead of both Pelletier and Aparin, but that's about it. So he came in 6th place. The 3rd, 4th and 5th spots, there was a little bit of jockeying around going between Anand, Kramnik and Svidor. Kramnik did better. He actually, in the new classical, he actually had a lot of good positions, and it could have been even in a better tournament situation. I particularly recall his somewhat uncharacteristic miss in the end game against Nepomniachtchi. Well, up a piece and a technical task, and well, something went wrong and Vladimir couldn't convert. He didn't play well in the slow blitz 10-10, but Anand played very well there. Anand actually finished second to Nakamura in that stage, and by virtue of that, he took third place overall. Svidler was a mixed bag, in both events. He did, however, notch an important win in the neoclassical part against Nakamura with the black pieces, which somewhat hurt Nakamura's chances, but no, as we all know, in the final standings it was Hikaru on top. Now, Nakamura's tournament almost was identical in both disciplines. He scored 5 points, which counted for 10 in the new classical, and 5 out of 7 in the blitz. His overall score was 15 points. And his main competitor was the Russian, Yan Nepomniachtchi. That came as no surprise. Nepomniachtchi is sort of has gotten his act together in the past year or so. He's taken chess more seriously, and or rather taken his video games less seriously, put it this way. And he gained a lot of rating points, and we're going to see Yan playing in the Grand Chess Tour, where I believe he's going to be one of the contenders for overall win, because this year's Grand Chess Tour is loaded with Rapid and Blitz. There are going to be 3 sessions of those, and 2 of classical chess. Oh, interesting comments here. Naka is no surprise there. Of course not. I mean, Nakamura has been one of the top players in the world already for, I would say, for about 6 years. Also, yet we know that his bad score against Magnus, and most of the time when we see Hikaru playing in the classical time control, he kind of stays in the middle of the pack. But considering the competition, it's not too bad. But when it comes, of course, to Rapid and Blitz, then he shifts higher in his rankings, and arguably he's second best in both Rapid and Blitz disciplines to Magnus Carlsen. Nepo is close by, all these other guys, but okay, well, our money is always on Hikaru. As far as FIDE not being able to develop a marketing strategy, no, that's always been the knock on them. Indeed, so these guys, if you knew these guys personally, and I have the misfortune of knowing them personally, you wouldn't be surprised that much. Basically, to me, FIDE on their top management is just feeding at the trough. These guys, they just lap it out, and well, sometimes, they talk big game of doing this and improving that, but in fact, they're not the right people. Now, if they're going to overthrow Ilyumzhinov, it's not going to help to the slightest, because they're basically the same people. Makropoulos, Azmay Parashvili, and Nigel Freeman, and all these guys. I mean, they're getting old also. Probably the nicest person of the bunch is this guy Vega, who represents the American Continental group, So I know him because I played in American Continentals. He's a nice guy, but he's also quite long in the tooth. So I don't know. We need fresh blood over there. If you ask me, I would go out on the limb and I say, well, we need Vladimir Kramnik as FIDE president. With universally respected and of course well-spoken and a great chess player, and still is. And I think that would be the best choice. I don't know if Vladimir is interested. I mean, Karpov or Kasparov, I think they both would be a bad fit, for this. I don't like any of these guys. Too much baggage over there. Kramnik I would be totally fine with. Thoughts on Svidler? No, well, you say you love Peter. Well, who doesn't? the man of supreme intellect, well, great creative chess player, and well, not everybody can become a world champion. Maybe he's not single-minded enough to focus on chess 100%. No, some people can do this, some can't, but well, it's always pleasure to see Peter, even if I could tell that his heart is not fully in it, and with age it's more and more the case. Well, what Peter wants, he wants to steal my job, right? He really loves talking about chess. He's a great commentator. His English is fantastic, and I mean, all right, one day when they say, where's Yermo? Where's my Russian schoolboy? And then you see Peter Svidwar there. Don't be surprised. Anyway, okay, so let's see how Nakamura did it, and I also want to connect the three parts which I'm going to split my presentation into with sort of the same issue. How does a high-rated player approaches a game against a lower-rated guy? Now, before you tell me, oh, I'm so low-rated, I don't know the feeling. Come on, cut it out. There is always a smaller fish, right? You can always, everybody has experience of playing with the lower-rated people. Peter Leko, great commentator. I'm sure there are a lot, No, well, I personally don't think that I am too shabby, but when I listen to some of chess players, they obviously they know a lot about the game, but it also takes a little bit of time to improve your public speaking and all this. And with time, of course, you can improve. But I tell you, I'll let you in on a little secret. It's well, those things are not a given. You actually have to do certain exercises and listen to the radio like I do, and all that, and just try to work on this stuff. It's actually a little bit harder than a lot of people think. But anyway, let's just skip all that stuff and let's move to the games. So the game I want to show you is the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Grigory Aparin. So that game was played in the blitz part. I already mentioned, as the luck of draw had it, Nakamura would start both sessions with playing first Pelletier, then Aparin. Now clearly, well, that was the moment to get points, right? So let's see how he approaches this situation. So he's white against Aparin, and there he goes. Kind of quiet opening choice. So one thing that high-rated players often do, they want to avoid particularly long theoretical variations because they don't want to give this chance like a vehicle for a low-rated player to navigate through the opening moves and part of the middle game by simply repeating something that was played by, I don't know, Caruana or Anand. So they want to get them out in the open field, not referring necessarily to pawn structure and open position or closed position. Open field in the sense that, no, you have to be on your own. So G3, and reply is B5. Now, Aparin, I don't know a whole lot about him, but I know his coach. His coach is Sergei Shipov, a popular TV personality and chess personality, obviously. Strong grandmaster in the past, and also an experienced coach. Among his accomplishments there in coaching was Yan Nepomniachtchi and Daniil Dubov and some others. And now Aparin is his primary young student. Now, by his style, Shipov was always more of the... He's not really a classical player, put it this way. Not the kind of a Gelfand mold. Although they're about the same age. Shipov actually turned 50, I think, earlier this year or maybe last year. They're about the same age, but he was always a little bit of a more modern, kind of a 1970s mold. Think of the great Hungarian school of chess with Aronian and Ribley. Yeah, Mr. Crest, of course. Of course we know Shipov. So, and he loved the hedgehog, right? So Shipov actually is the author of two, not one, but two excellent books on the hedgehog. It's probably the most comprehensive studies on that subject. So b5 is not surprising, you know. That's a little bit, well, not necessarily occupying center with the pawns, but well, developing some kind of a fluid pawn structure. It's very much Shipov style. So anyway, is Nakamura prepared for that? The answer is Nakamura is always prepared for everything. Hikaru possesses a uniquely wide opening repertoire. When he prepares for his next opponent, his main task is to find a weakness somewhere in the opponent's opening repertoire and also surprise the opponent. Nakamura doesn't like to be led into some kind of prepared line. Nobody does, but Hikaru particularly doesn't like it. So I think he counted on a possibility of this move b5. And now he plays this perhaps strange looking move, knight a3. Okay, the pawn is under attack. What do you do with the pawn? If you move it forward, then the knight comes to c4. Now, the b4 pawn has gone a little bit too far. It will become target for this attack with a3. When you think of these two bishops, like in any Queen's Indian position, well, white's bishop is stronger than black's bishop. Two reasons. Number one, this bishop protects the king. So it's not only the activity of the piece, it's also keeping the king safe. Number two, when white castles, the bishop will become defended, which cannot be said about its counterpart on b7. There are many tactical lines. Okay. Can I do a ridiculous one? Okay, d4 is totally a ridiculous move, I know. But then white wins by playing this. Next is knight check, followed by bishop takes bishop on b7, trapping the rook in the corner. So those things are kind of present. But clearly black doesn't have to play d5. But the knight on c4, and now a3 is coming up right here to bother the pawn on b4. So, Aparin didn't like that. He played a6. Now comes c4. You know what it reminds me of? How about Sveshnikov Sicilian, eh? Your knight gets driven back to a3 after coming from d4 to b5. And then black plays b5, right? Now, of course, knight then moves the knight from c3 to d5. Sveshnikov. But then often he plays c4. Here, of course, the situation is different. We don't have a set pawn structure in the center. But nonetheless, this kind of attack makes sense. I mean, suppose black takes here, white takes. You can say, oh, black gained because he's left with more central pawn than white's pawn. But it's known that sometimes the pieces in many openings, I will start with the Greenfield, of course, can provide excellent pressure against central pawns. Well, you need to have good development for that, of course. This may be the case. I'm not quite sure how black is going to set the pawns. I mean, if you play d5, then you're clearly not so happy. You already have a backward pawn. Even if it comes to c5, it can still come under attack. And look out, that knight is pretty good. Now, there is actually a threat of knight g5. So maybe d5 is not very attractive, but what else? Suppose you want to set it up in a dragon way, and you play like c5, white castles, and maybe you play d6. Well, here a couple of things can happen. First of all, white can try to prepare b4. It's a possibility. So he can start some action there on the queen side before black completes his development. So white's ahead in development, by the way. A lot of us would fall asleep. Oh, that's a knight f3 ready opening. There is never anything development-wise. Don't be so sure. Please, don't be so sure. Tactics are possible. So that's one opinion. Of course, white can also play in the center by playing d4 and then try to use the pawn majority on the queen side with the A and B pawns. There is a chance of occupying that a5 square. You know, if white knight gets to come to a5, it will bother the bishop. So that's also not very attractive. Possibly Aparin's choice is the most attractive. Then comes this, and then that. Now we have a strange looking knight on c2. Okay. Off the move bishop e4. It's sort of a typical move in Queen's Indian positions. But can you please remind me, why does black bother to play it? What's the reason? Wasn't the bishop good enough on the diagonal from afar, from b7? What's the point of bishop e4? Why can't we just castle? What will white do in reply to castles? King Lear, expect you to give me your answer. What is that white is typical idea that white is thinking of realizing? And white will go d5. All right, that's total Satran chess. That's how we play it. Exactly, you always cut across this diagonal. And on this, knight h4. All right, it's somewhat different situation because of the knight on c2 and the black pawns there. But in reality, maybe it's not such a bad deal for white. I'm thinking of this. First of all, this knight can actually quite quickly join the fray on the king's side. The pawn on b4 is a little shaky, so if black plays this, I guess white will just go forward, like that. Then of course comes the knight to f5, and can hit the b4 pawn as well. I mean, this whole thing, this hyper-modern chess with moving the flank pawns, A and B, as Aparin did it, it is designed for slow developing ready scenarios. When it takes a different shape of something that Kasparov would play, kind of straight up d4 with sacrifices and breakthroughs, one questions the importance of this. I mean, certainly it will never... Well, it might come to it later in the game, but not before black survives the direct assault. Yep, Buenos Aires 1980. Pologaevsky Korchnoi? Yeah, of course. So anyway, bishop e4, it has already been played. And now Hikaru introduces a new plan, which in my opinion is very, very good. Now, look, if a5 maintaining, two problems. Problem one, you get pushed back, and then white can do the same thing with d5, shutting down that bishop. B, after the trade, well, there's a possibility of attacking this pawn. Aparin took, and now a great move, b3. So it turns out that white gets a little bit of something there on the queen side. Both sides now have potentially weak pawns, a6 versus b3. But b3 is little closer to the white pieces and therefore easier to defend. And besides, it provides the support to the c4 pawn. I think it's a good trade for white. Alright, there takes d6. Now, speaking of d6, I understand that Grigory Aparin didn't want that, because obviously white takes this way, then the knight will probably go to e3, although who knows, maybe even b4, and then queen a1. White can quickly get on that pawn, a6. So he wanted to leave white with a silly looking bishop on a3. You'll see how silly it was as the game progressed. I prefer white already. Knight e3. Little strange position of the knight, but it's close enough to the center. Controls a lot of squares. Now c6. Well, do you like c5? I bet you don't like it that much. It's an isolated pawn on c5. Most likely white will take. So, takes a decision to play c6. Queen there. Knight d7. And now white completes the knight maneuver to come to the best square in most d4 openings. Nakamura played very quickly, which is important for 10-minute game. So his opponent was looking for some counterplay, and he played this move, queen b6. And took the pawn. Well, you can say, of course, well, how do you do this? You know, that's Hikaru Nakamura, and he doesn't give pawns away for nothing. It had to be some kind of trap. It's a trap, Admiral Akbar. Yeah, but, well, Aparin's young, right? Besides, you know, I like his attitude. If you don't see refutation, then you go for it. I mean, probably it's the worst thing, you know, that a player can do is just trust the opponent too much. And that's a good, healthy attitude. Korchnoi was, no, spirit of Korchnoi. Grab pawns because the opponent is an idiot. He just blundered the pawn and I grab it. Yeah. No, in this case, Nakamura had a prepared line, a tactical line, which he calculated very well. Look out. That's your bad bishop on a3. Pins the d-pawn. Well, the queen was safe for as long as the bishop was on e4. You take here, comes this one. The queen's gone. Even including, okay, let me see, I had a line here. This took. Now, if bishop takes g2 here, Hikaru calculated that he gives up the c4 pawn, but catches the queen anyway. I don't see how black collects enough material for the queen. Usually by enough, people mean rook, and minor piece. Then you have chances. Maybe a fortress, but anything less than that you're gonna lose. But honestly, I don't see how, because like simply if you take and then takes, I think this bishop is still in trouble. No, then maybe you can escape, but the rook is under attack. I mean, I'm not sure. You play this move to hit the bishop, but the bishop can hit the rook. So perhaps black can only get 2 minor pieces for queen. Then the number of pawns is not important. The pawns are not advanced. So white's winning. So seeing this, Aparin played e takes d4, but that's just down a piece. Well, basically that's the end of the game. There is nothing to talk about. Well, only one pawn, and even that is gone. Everything comes under attack. Resigns. Alright, so it's not a complicated game, but in some ways, you know, that's business as usual for the higher rated player, Hikaru Nakamura. What he did in this game, he played a smart opening. He had his own, not quite innovation, but his own ideas how to play against b5. And he did everything right. I'm particularly impressed with that b3. I mean, first a3 and then b3. That was nicely done. Good win for Nakamura. Well, to round up my report on the Zurich tournament, I'll tell you that Aparin turned out to be the man who decided the outcome of the tournament, because when it came to the last round of Blitz, Nepomniachtchi, who would do the opposite of Nakamura. Nakamura would beat Pelletier and Aparin in first 2 rounds. Nepomniachtchi would do this in rounds 6 and 7. So he did beat Pelletier, and since Hikaru took a quick draw against Anand, everybody expected a tie for first place, and then whatever, the Armageddon game or whatnot, there would be a show, obviously, between the 2 best fast time control experts in this tournament, Nakamura and Nepomniachtchi. But Aparin had his own ideas. In a sharp Sicilian, he totally outplayed Nepomniachtchi with black and scored a victory that kept Jan in second place only. Well, I like Nepomniachtchi's attitude. He was asked by some journalist over there at the closing ceremony, "Are you happy with your tournament?" And Nepo just glared at the guy and said something like, "Are you kidding me?" Now, that's the spirit. Well, I always appreciated Nepomniachtchi's chess, his ability to play sharp positions with concrete variations, calculated so quickly, and create those positions as well is remarkable. So, arguably, if he sticks around, then along with Vashieva, Graf, the probably 2 sharpest players in the top 10. No, closely followed, of course, by Nakamura and Caruana, but as far as playing wild chess, probably Nepo is the man. And no, he's young. We remember his name, of course. I mean, he did great in the junior competitions and competed with Magnus Carlsen the same age. But that's what it is, same age. No, maybe 27 is not too late to make a push and come to next tour. We will see. We will keep an eye on Nepomniachtchi, who's involved now in both series of Grand Prix tournaments. Next one is to start in Moscow in May, and Grand Chess Tour, which is going to start in June, with rapid tournaments and rapid and blitz combination events in Paris and Leuven, Belgium. So, pretty game won by Nakamura. Congratulations to Hikaru. He's the man of Zurich. 3 wins in a row, 3 years in a row. Well, great. Now, US Championship long forgotten. Good job. Okay, let's make a jump, and we go to GRENKE Classic. Now, it's played in Germany, right? I don't know what GRENKE really is, Well, maybe I'm wrong, I thought maybe it's a company that sponsors the tournament. I don't think it's a geographical area, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Please correct me. Obviously, I need your corrections. Aparin is either 19 or 20, I'm not sure. You say he's 19? Okay, great. Well, as I said, I don't want to give many advances to a young player. He's only rated barely above 2600, but he's working with a good coach, and no, it's not too late. It's not too late to make some improvements in his game. Well, currently Russians don't have a star of Kasparov, Kramnik caliber, like Magnus Carlsen kind of. So, kid at 14 years of age and already superstar. No, those far in between, of course, but they have a good crop of young players and guys who barely in their 20s. Fedoseev, Artemiev, now Aparin. Dubov is still not that old, so maybe some of them can make a push. All right, so we go into GRENKE tournament. So GRENKE is played in Germany, so we have German players. We have Arkady Naidich, who I guess went to represent Azerbaijan, played for them in the Olympiad. I don't know if he's still there or if he's coming back to Germany. Well, my friends, German chess players, they complain about their federation in Germany. But all the same, I've never met a chess player who was happy about their federation. It's so common. Maybe it's in Baden-Baden, in that general area. I'm not quite sure, where it is. But let me see. Maybe there is some kind of... Okay, let me see. I'm trying. GRENKE Chess Classic. No, I don't want to waste your time by looking it up. Anyway, so they have also Georg Meyer. Georg Meyer is known to many American chess fans because he studied at Webster, part of a great program by Susan Polgar. Played not very frequently, but played in some tournaments. I actually played him once in Albuquerque, New Mexico, of all places. I was kind of shocked to see him there, but I guess he wanted to see the country a little bit. Anyway, so he's a very solid player, and also he's a great blitz player. Always competes, in those online blitz tournaments. And, he's quite good at that. Naidich obviously is more known and has a track record of playing against top players very well. He's kind of a loose cannon a little bit. Now, once he defeated Magnus 2 games in a row, but he takes risks, wins, loses. He's more of an attacking style player. So that's two of the local participants in that tournament. And the third one is a younger guy who I hardly know. I think he's only 22 years old. It's Matthias Blubaum. I only saw his picture. Well, seemed to be a very, very serious young man, and he's struggling a little bit. Now, truth to tell, so is Georg Meyer. But they struggle because the competition is so strong. Look at the guys who showed up for this edition of GRENKE Classic. We have Magnus Carlsen sporting eyeglasses for the first time. Oh yeah, so Baden-Baden. Yeah, the great resort and casino. Well, Fyodor Dostoevsky, well, many people. I'm sure David Yanovsky paid a few visits to that casino. Yeah. Many players, they're known for their looking for adrenaline rush, while playing and gambling. No, it's part of it. No, not all chess players are gamblers. A little bit later about the chess and gambling. I'm getting to this. Yeah, but I mean, Magnus wearing glasses. I mean, I don't know, I'm trying to recall. I got my eyeglasses prescribed when I think I was 13 or 14. But I remember that I didn't wear them every day. But at some moment, maybe in my late teens or early 20s, I had to. Well, simply because I couldn't really focus on chess. I mean, there are two things in this. So, of course, you don't really see things very well in distance, but somehow at the chessboard, when chess pieces are closer to you, I was able to play without glasses, but eventually I started getting headaches. And I read what Magnus said. He said, I always knew I was nearsighted, but now I started getting headaches. The doctors say that I have to wear glasses all the time. No, well, he looks good in glasses, right? Yeah. The image of a chess player. And besides, when he does his commercials or plays sports, there are contact lenses. So, no big deal. So Magnus started a little slow. He finally won his first game today in round 5. Yeah, the surprising leader in the tournament after first 2 rounds was Hou Yifan. Yeah, Hou Yifan, well, who basically surrendered her Women's World Championship title, said goodbye, and I don't want to bother with you anymore. And I think she did the right thing. She really had nothing else to prove. USA versus Russia on the moon. Oh, that's the race. I mean, space program? I don't know what you're referring to. Bishop E1 OB. Kind of Star Wars name. Anyway, what I'm saying is, Hou Yifan. So she said, okay, fine, I'm not playing there. The Chinese Chess Association obviously wasn't happy with that. I already mentioned this in one of my previous shows, but the way it works there, right? I mean, it's a government organization, right? It's part of the sports ministry, whatnot, similar to how it was in the Soviet Union. So the guys there at Chinese Chess Association are basically government employees. What's the most important thing for a government employee? So no trouble, no scandals. All right, there was a little bit in Gibraltar, but I'm not even talking about this. No big deal. Most important thing is your quarterly report. You have to report progress. And when you have a girl like Hou Yifan, who's gonna win a world championship every 2 years, it's great, right? Because whoever reads those reports, if anyone does, they will see, oh, we won a women's world championship title. That means that our chess association doing a good job. Maybe they'll get a Christmas bonus. Clearly. But anyway, she had it in her, to just choose her own path in life, which is great. So, anyway, but Gibraltar didn't go too well. But in this tournament, she starts off beating Caruana. And what a game it was. You guys probably saw it. Then round 2, she from a sharp position suddenly develops a crushing attack against Georg Meyer in Meyer's time trouble. Wins again. Now she's 2 out of 2. And she plays Magnus Carlsen. Magnus, however, played 2 draws. He was particularly upset not to be able to beat Bluebaum in the first round. I mean, seriously, the kid, Matthias Bluebaum, he was paralyzed with fear. He, in some sort of a standard hedgehog thing, that appeared from King's Indian, he spent all of his time, he was left with 2 minutes, before any confrontation even happened, in the center or anywhere on the board. Seeing his opponent long time and indecisive, Magnus broke through in the center and had advantage, but somehow he misplayed it. And it ended in a disappointing draw. Didn't do much better in the second round. Well, he had a winning position against Aronian, only to allow Aronian some magical escape with the piece sacrifice. It was a fantastic game. Ended up with Aronian promoting his pawn to a queen. Magnus, of course, had a rook and knight and pawns and active king. He was never in danger of losing, but it was disappointing for Magnus not to win the game. So, how does Magnus approach this? His block against Hou Yifan. Sicilian, that's for starters. Of course, we know that when Magnus just okay to behave, he plays e5 and relies on the Berlin. But here is Sicilian, and neither for that. Perhaps he got a little surprised with this move. A4 is known for a long time, but it appears rather infrequently, here and there. Among the players who played it some 10 years ago or so was Gatakamsky. No, black actually has a choice. You may go into the dragon thing, where white is not going to be able to do the Yugoslav attack because he committed the move a4. But anyway, e5. Probably Magnus did the right thing, because when he plays the Sicilian, he plays the Najdorf most of the time. I don't think he's particularly familiar with the Scheveningen structures. But now white moves the knight away to f3, while a4 is a useful move because it stops b5. This is all very well known. White plays bishop g5, of course, and then this, and it's time to take before the black knight comes to d7. Now Very nice choice, by the way, from Hou Yifan. She has this solid position. White simply cannot get worse here. And probably not the best choice for Magnus. Obviously, he had no way of knowing. Derek, we'll get into this. Let you in a little secret. We'll get into this. Let me just finish up with the GRENKE tournament. So, probably not an ideal opening choice. Because you look at the position not objectively. Like, there is... I mean, it's a game between two human players. Where is the objectivity? It's all subjective. And subjective is that Magnus is unhappy by blowing two very promising positions. It could have been 2 out of 2. By the way, had it been 2 out of 2, probably he would not even have bothered with the Sicilian. He would play his e5 and maybe he would have done better. Maybe he would have been 3 out of 3. Here he kind of plays himself in a situation where he is supposed to play for a win, but white is just so solid. And the structure itself is not what Magnus particularly likes, because Magnus plays chess always with the eye on the endgame. He's willing to take risks, a temporary misplacing his pieces maybe allowing the opponent some attacking chances, maybe even grab some material, but always his eye is on the endgame. So if he survives tactics, which is pretty good, by the way, in surviving that, he's a great tactical defender. Just like Nakamura. They both, I think, the best defenders in tactical positions. Then Magnus wins the game later. But this is not what he wanted to get. Maybe he wanted to see bishop g5 or the Fischer-Sozin attack. This is just too stable for white. So they play some moves and trades. Oh, black actually won back the control over the d5 square, because the white knight is not participating. But it came at the cost. The cost is the awkward position of the knight on b6. The knight obviously better off on b6 when the first pawn goes to b5. Secondly, even if d5 appears to be possible, that white knight on e3 is not completely useless. With the queen together, they provide pressure against the e5 pawn. So that's the pawn black is gonna lose if he plays d5. So this, and that, and the build-up, and this. Alright. After the game, everybody said, oh, well, Magnus had an equal game, and then he played b5 and made things difficult for himself. Now, how can I comment on this statement? Yeah, well, he might have done the dragon, but it's probably was a long time ago. And besides, in this situation with the moves a6, a4 included, I mean, I'm not sure exactly, I'm not really an expert on that, but maybe white will play some systems with short castle. I don't know. Oh yeah, Kamsky and Topalov, but I think that was more of a Scheveningen setup with e6, which Magnus simply never played. So he relied on the c5, on the knight of structure, but to say that he is equal here, well, black's play absolutely hit the wall. You cannot play d5. You cannot play f5. f5 is going to make your position real weak. So what's left? The only active play left is to play b5. Now, why activity? No, it's because of the tournament situation. This girl is a full point ahead of Magnus Carlsen. And she is 200 rating points below. How many rating points can Magnus give and fall behind in the tournament? He wanted to win. But the position did not offer him a natural plan of campaign that would provide him with counter chances. Maybe even at the risk, but see, sometimes the risk is difficult. It could be greater in terms of Alright, you may get mated. You weaken your king. But if you defend, then you have your play on the other side or whatever. So that risk is great, but it's a short-term risk. b5 is a lot of long-term risk with no clear benefit. Yet he played it. Rook d5. So they said that rook d5, he missed rook d5. No, I mean, how can I comment on that? I mean, the d5 is the main square. Of course, most of the time it's the knight that would go there, but you can't really miss rook d5 move. It's something that white would do. I mean, there is no pressure here, and the idea is, suppose black returns, is to play now this move. And now the knight is coming to c4. Black no longer has the b pawn to chase that knight away. Well, strangely enough, white is not even looking to occupy d5 with the knight. She's looking to win the pawn on d6 with that. There is only one recipe against it, is to do this and then play knight d4. Yeah, but white wouldn't hesitate. And probably Magnus looked at this position and he thought, oh no, I don't want to play this. Who would want to play this? I mean, the black rooks are totally shut down by this knight. Pressure there. You can't even neutralize the white queen over there. h4 is possible. It's not a pleasant position at all. So Magnus decided to go all in. He played this awkward looking move with the idea of covering the d6 pawn and using this rook for counterplay. Alright, would be nice to regain the position of the pawn on b5 and chase that knight away. She doesn't have to take. Now around this part, as I was watching the game, Magnus played queen c7. I thought, black is in big trouble here. Two weaknesses, a6 and d6, and awkward pieces, the knight on b7. No, Magnus did not, absolutely, hasn't lost his hunger for chess. He wants to play, that's what he does best, and the thing is, he's just not dominating, right? The way he was dominating 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe a new generation of players grew up. Well, big part of Magnus's domination was his ability to dispatch easily from Anand and Kramnik, Topalov. He has dominating score against all these players. With some it took him a little bit longer, but Gelfand always dominated. Aside of Nakamura, well, there is really no clear domination that Magnus has shown over Wesley So, Maxim Vachier-Lagraf, or Fabiano Caruana. He may be ahead in their head-to-head matchups, but by not a whole lot. And he lost a lot of games to Caruana, for example. So, if you want to see Magnus finishing always in first place, with a few points ahead of the field, you're probably not going to see this happening. Just simply because the others are quite good. Magnus is good enough to score his 60%. But what is 60%? Alright, so he scores 60% against competition, but that's like what? Is that 70 points difference? Yeah. Alright, so he's at 28.50, and this guy's on average 27.80. And he maintains his 26.50, right? By scoring 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10 will be enough to compete in every tournament. Maybe he will finish second once when somebody gets hot, like Caruana did in MVL, maybe then Wesley now is the hot player. But Magnus is going to be in contention, but you can't really ask for more. I mean, that alone is extremely difficult to do. Now, if if his competitors gained rating points, all of them, and if they got to 28-30 range, then Magnus probably would get a shot at 2900. But I'm sorry to say this, the question's been asked for a long time about Magnus reaching 2900. I simply don't see this happening. His advantage over his peers is simply not that big. Well, what happens when you play yourself in this ugly position? You can't move the knight, you'll be losing on d6. You pinned here and there. White's turn. So here it is. The most, aside of what she did, she took on b5. The most attractive move is this, because a6 cannot be protected. In reply to that, Magnus prepared this. Rook takes, exchange sacrifice. And now, even without that knight, check, queen takes c4. The knight is not participating, but black has counterattack. Hits e4 with check and hits, no, kind of a mate, or at least attack on the king. A great idea. All right. When you see a line like this, as white, do you discard it? No, you learn from it. You figure out, what's my problem here? My problem is the king, right? If I had my king safer, then I would be up to exchange against the passive knight on b7. Suppose these two moves are included. Then white goes for this, same line. This is how you come up with that. You're looking for improvement, for extra square for your king. And when it comes to this, and you take, white can play this move, effectively stopping the threat of queen f1, offering the trade. Now, if the trade happens, black cannot get any of the pawns. No, actually c2 you can get, because now white cannot get the knight because of the perpetual check. But that's a knight and this backward pawn. It's not enough compensation. That's not enough. White can play queen e1, and this, I would say, probably a technically winning position for white, with some effort, with many moves, but it looks like it. Yeah, if she played h4, I mean, black can play this right away, but then white begins this operation. King g7, oh, the queen can return. So it's not only winning the a6 pawn. Now there is a new idea, h6, queen g5. Black's totally on the ropes. You know, guys, I'll go out on a limb and I tell you, if Magnus had the white pieces here, there is no man or woman alive on this planet currently that would survive against him. Magnus would win. Is Hou Yifan good enough to play high-class moves like h4? She probably is, but no, for that you have to believe. And I think she was a little apprehensive playing Magnus. Even though, you know, she just defeated Caruana and was leading the tournament. So she saw this and she went for it. When you really want to simplify because you're somewhat afraid of the opponent, then you sort of talk yourself into this, and perhaps she did. She thought, oh, I'm going to stay up a pawn, right? Because I'm attacking. I'm going to get the b pawn. And indeed, if she could get the b pawn, this 4 on 4 with the outside passer, even if the black rook is ideal on b2, gives white great winning chances. It has been played and analyzed. However, there is this. Hits the e4 pawn. White cannot do this because rook e3 will attack 2 pawns. So she took, and now comes a very important move, b4. Having removed the pawn from the attack, black wants to return to the b file and win the pawn on b3. So the only reasonable move to play is rook b5. Now takes. It's not the end of it, by the way. I'm just guessing, but maybe she even saw this deep and thought, oh, I got great winning chances here. I'm gonna approach with my king, and the black rook doesn't have that many squares on the fourth. If I can push that rook away, I get 3 on 3 with the b pawn, which is borderline winning position. And wouldn't that be nice, you know, to take Magnus for a ride in a technical endgame when there is no risk of losing and see how he likes defending? No, well, obviously she's not that good because she missed that move. I'm amazed how many endgames I encountered in my practice and playing and analyzing when a rook holds the whole thing together, just one piece, against the superior forces, the king and the rook. You try to come out from f3, you drop your pawn. She tried to come out here, almost sneaking out. Well, the rook comes back. You try f3, then black attacks 2 and wins the f3 pawn. And it's a draw. So they just repeated moves, they went back and forth, and they agreed to a draw. Now, if before the tournament somebody told you or me that, okay, Hou Yifan is gonna make a draw against Magnus Carlsen, we would say, oh, good for her. 200 rating points difference. That's like 24% expected score. But considering the tournament situation and the situation on the board, it could have been much more. Now, Hou Yifan lost her leading position in round 5 when she got grinded down in a long minor piece endgame. She had knight versus bishop by Maxim Vashyeva-Graf. She did have a draw, but she just couldn't see it clearly and made mistakes. And it's an instructive endgame. But now she's behind. She's at +1. And the leader of the tournament is Aronian, who's playing fantastic chess. And he's currently a whole point ahead of the field. He already won 3 games. Considering that he already played Carlsen, he's probably the favorite now to win the whole tournament. They have 8 players in the tournament. There are only 2 games left. It would be a great comeback for Aronian, who obviously has an army of supporters and always heartbreaking losses in the second half of candidates tournaments. And no, did I change my mind and now believe that Aronian is once again a world championship contender? The answer is no, I don't think so. I think Aronian had his chances. Well, it was maybe a little unfortunate that it had to be Magnus over there, but he didn't get to play Magnus in the match. Now I don't believe that he can do this. I believe it's now in the hands of So, Caruana, MVL, Nepomniachtchi, Karyakin again, Giri, obviously guys like this. I simply don't see players in their mid-30s, such as Levon Aronian and Alexander Grishuk, to be able to elevate their game. And same goes, of course, for the great veterans. But I've been wrong before, and I don't know. Was that a title of a song? I'm wrong about everything. Yeah, I think so. I recall the song from the 1980s. All right. I left myself with 15 minutes. Now, Rina, silver and gold. All right. I did play in a tournament in Reno, Nevada. And I won that tournament. Clear. 5 out of 6. Drum roll. Okay, I'll show you my last round win. But first about the Arena tournament. Now, those of you who are not from the United States may not even know where Arena is. Arena is a town in the northwestern Nevada. It's kind of, you coming from Las Vegas, you just hug along the state border of California and come up to that area. It's a little elevation there, maybe what, about 4,000 feet, maybe slightly lower, but a mountains around. I mean, if you look out west, Sierra Nevada. And being in the state of Nevada, of course, it's a gambling town. Yeah, so they have casinos there, big casinos, big buildings, hotel casinos, and the downtown area, and also down the main drag, which is called Virginia Street. Now, it's a growing community. It's not only a gambling town. Maybe that's the way it was 60 or 70 years ago, when some writers wrote about Reno being a place where people from San Francisco drive up, young people, to meet women, to booze up, lose their wages, in a couple of days or whatever. Also place known where you can get married in one day, right? In the state of Nevada. Just buy your marriage license there, being out of state. And more importantly, you can get divorced in one day. Anyway, but that part of Reno, of course, is there. But it's also a college town now. Northern Nevada University is quite big. They have their art scene, and they also have a very beautiful downtown area. That river called Truckee River that comes down from the Sierra Nevada mountains, where the town of Truckee is located. But that's California already. It's swollen up so much when we were there. I mean, they have this beautiful river walk, but the river was threatening to spill over. You couldn't walk down there to what normally is the water level by using any of these landings. It looked wild, and it was wild. Obviously, a large snowfall, and this year is opposite to the usual California drought problems. So, they say that mid-30s are most suitable age to be best at chess. Why not Aronian in the World Championship contender list? Because that opinion is probably 25 or 30 years out of date. It was pre-computer. You see, at that time, a chess player simply had to accumulate a lot of knowledge about chess by trying different openings and playing different pawn structures. It was almost impossible to be a complete player in the early 20s. Even Kasparov, when he came to his World Championship match with Karpov, was not yet a complete player. He became one during those battles. Read his own books. But Karpov and Kasparov and Fischer, of course, are exceptions. Speaking of Fischer, did he look ready to win the World Championship title when he was 16 or 17 years old? When he played in the 16 he was when he played in Yugoslavia, when Tal won candidates tournament. 3 years later he was in Curacao. I know the Russians played draws to each other, but come on, you should be happy they played draws with each other. You win your games and win the tournament and beat the old man Botvinnik. Fischer was what? 1962. 19 years old. He was nowhere near ready. Not mentally and not chess-wise. There were still gaps in his chess. So back then, this is how it was. These days, everything's accelerated. The process of acquiring chess knowledge is by computers much faster. You get access to other people's ideas. You have engines to analyze. More important now is to be at your top physical shape and also your ability to memorize variations. So you don't have any memory gaps. So the best age for chess now, I believe it's somewhere between 25 and 30. Obviously, great players, they will have longer staying power. Alright. Forget about this, let's go back to Reno things. So Reno, now I lived in San Francisco, right, in the Bay Area. Actually, I lived in East Bay, but I worked in San Francisco for 8 years, from 1999 to 2007. During this period of time, I traveled to Reno twice a year to play both the Easter tournament and then the fall tournament. The fall tournament is actually larger, it's called the Western States Open. And the tournament during Easter weekend used to be called the Far West. And now, already for a few years, it's named after Grandmaster Larry Evans, who passed away, Larry Evans Memorial. But the organizer is the same, it's Jerry Weichel. And his family, this is really a family-run event. Jerry and his wife Fran and his daughter Dana and his son-in-law Adam, and then they have 2 kids, grandchildren of Jerry and Fran. Maybe these kids, when they grow up, I forgot. Oh, Lucy and Thomas, yeah, that's the little kids. When they grow up, maybe they'll pick up. Well, anyway, it's a great tradition. Now, to go through thick and thin, with economy and all this, But Jerry is a great guy, so it's always on his connections on personal level. He can relate to people. Surprisingly, a lot of guys say, oh, this guy is rough around the edges, but no, well, maybe so in some ways, but he chooses people well to deal with. That's why he was able to run this tournament for very many years. First it was Reno Open sometime in early 1980s. Then it became Western States. I played there for the first time in the year 1996. And as I said, when I moved to California, I was traveling there twice a year. I even went there, maybe once or twice without the tournament. I remember once my friend Suat Atalek came over and we were preparing for some tournaments. And no, things a little too noisy in the house sometimes with young kids. So I said, look, Suat, why don't we drive up to Reno, and then take a hotel room over there. The same hotel, the Sands Regency. Not the most fashionable, not the most expensive, not the most glamorous or luxurious, but that's been the place that hosted that tournament. Now, the tournament is of a traditional format. It's played over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 2 games a day, with long, ancient, no increment time control. So we go 40-2, and then we go sudden death 1 hour. Even that is revolutionary, because I remember for many years, Weichel was saying, no sudden death in my tournaments. We'll get extra 15 minutes for every 20 moves. I remember once, it may have been 96, there was a game that took forever. Walter Brown played Soltis, Anti-Soltis, famous grandmaster. And he had an advantage with 2 bishops against a knight and pawn. And eventually Walter won that game by first capturing the pawn, then rounding up the knight, as it was theoretically winning. We didn't know it back then. Only computers discovered all the intricacies of 2 bishops versus a knight. But anyway, Walter won, but the start of the last round was delayed by 4 hours. And then guess what Walter did, he beat me in the last round. And I think I was #1 ranked player in that tournament. Anyway, great stuff, but now they use sudden death, so the rounds start more or less on time, and I played there many times. And generally speaking, I did well, but I'm trying to recall if I ever won a tournament in Reno outright. And I don't think so. So now in the year 2017, 21 years since my debut in Reno, I finally win a tournament outright. So how did I do it? The answer is luck. Okay, I come to the tournament. #1 player is the fiancée of the new United States women champion, Sabina Foysher. He is a grandmaster originally from Iran. His name is Ilshan Moradiabadi. He graduated from a chess program. No, I mean, he got in as part of chess program. He graduated from Texas Tech. And no, he's a very well spoken and very nice young man. Helped his fiancée to achieve great success in St. Louis just a month ago. Less than a month ago. But he's a good player of his own, so he was number one. Then the usual suspect over there is Melik Hachian. Melik is a great friend of mine. He's from Glendale, California. He is a popular coach. He's a coach of the women's team. He teaches all sorts of chess camps. Very energetic and great persona he is. Always talks to parents of his students. No, maybe that's the secret. So Melik was there. Then there was Nick DeFermin. I was so happy to see Nick. I know that for the past 5 years, DeFermin lived in the Bay Area and worked at Mechanics Institute as a scholastic chess coordinator there at Mechanics Chess Club. His job is way more difficult than mine was because I was just a kind of a club manager. Well, he actually has to go out and visit some schools and all that. Well, but Nick originally is from the Bay Area. He graduated from UC Berkeley. So that's some homecoming for him. And no, he really decided to put his roots down after being a world traveler from Denmark to New York and so on. So he's building a house now. So you can imagine how busy you are, when you actually build a house. But he found time to attend the tournament, and maybe he played some extra draws, but in the last round, he really showed his strength by defeating in a very nice game. He defeated Melik Hachian. In the meantime, so that was me and Melik over there were in the tie, and also two more players. Elshan Maradibadi played Enrico Sevillano. Some of you may not know who Enrico is. He mainly plays on the West Coast. He lives in California desert town, basically. Tehachapi, I believe the name of the town is. It's kind of halfway, to Las Vegas. Anyway, so Enrico is a known player, originally from the Philippines. He played a lot, but mainly on the West Coast. Also, his stepson, John Daniel Bryant, is a pretty good player of his own, and he's actually higher rated than Enrico now. But Bryant didn't have a good tournament, but Enrico did. After losing in the first round and upset, he won the next 4 games. So he played black against Elshan Moradiabadi, and he held his own. He was somewhat worse, but he held a draw, and therefore gained a 3-way tie for second place with 4.5. But there comes lucky me. After drawing Maradiabadi and Hachian early in the tournament, probably because of my lower rating, well, Melik got to play Nick, I got to play Ray Kaufman. So Ray Kaufman is the son of Larry Kaufman, former world senior champion and the man who got his grandmaster title at the age of 60. Also known for his tireless work with Rybka as the engine and being the man behind exhibition matches that Rybka played against famous grandmasters. His son, Ray, is a 2300 player. I played him before. He's also known for his passion for shogi. So not too many, I know it's a board game too, and I played a couple of times the Japanese visitor from Japan, Yoshinaro Habu, who is one of the best players in the world in shogi. But I played him in chess. But Ray Kaufman plays shogi, so he told me that this weekend he would be in LA playing in the big shogi tournament. But nonetheless, I get white pieces against Ray. Lucky me. I chose this move order, somewhat Nakamura style. I didn't feel like going into the Benoni. Normally I don't mind playing against the Benoni, but I thought Ray doesn't play a whole lot. And that's his favorite opening. So I thought I would play something that he hasn't seen maybe that often. And also I wanted to avoid any kind of forcing lines. Or that ironically, I ended up negotiating one, but you will see. But I wanted to have my own path in this game. So we go into the hedgehog, right? And now d6. Most of the time we see bishop e7. Probably if white plays d4 and takes with the queen, it all comes down to the same thing. But I was planning to play rook e1. The move I played very many times. Now black of course can go queen's Indian with d5, but most hedgehog guys, they don't want to do this. And knowing that Ray never plays it, really, like queen's Indian or black side of the cattle and none of that stuff. He's a Benoni player. I wouldn't expect him to do this. So then yeah, it goes like this. Oh, actually, oh yeah, no, maybe d6. That doesn't matter, a6. Alright. So gets to this position, which I had many times. Now black has to play queen c7 to stop the tactical threat of e5. I told you that this bishop is better than the bishop on b7. Proof right here. White's gonna come out on top. On the capture, takes there, black plays this, two pieces under attack. But advantageously for himself, white has this move that ruins black's pawn structure. And then he pulls back the bishop. Clear advantage. Of course, if black takes this, then the rook has escaped already. So white gets more. He's gonna end up with two minor pieces for rook and pawn. Also good for him. But a d6 move order, right? Oh, pardon me. I need to tell the whole story. I stopped halfway. So suppose it goes like this. So white gets more of a Sicilian-like position with the knight on d4 rather than messing around with the queen on d4. And true to the nature of this position, white plays aggressively in the center and kingside. It all starts with this move where this pawn is offered. It's not good to take it on account of rook c1, and white has a big jump knight d5, coming to c7. So black obviously ignores it, plays knight d7, white does this, white does f4, castles, rook c1, and that's basically last move in preparation, and then white goes g4. I had a great record in this line. Somehow white's usual play in the Sicilian play is somewhat augmented by this pawn on c4. Better control of the center, no b5. So I like this line. But d6. Black actually has a point. Now, if d4, then white goes to the usual hedgehog. But I go rook e1, and look, he's leaving the bishop on f8. We're gonna go a little longer today, because I really want to show you the intricacies of this game. Now, all necessary hedgehog moves, and queen c7. So what's the difference, you might say? You can still go bishop e3, and he's not gonna take that. No, he won't, but he may play this. What was dangerous for the queen will become quite possible for the rook. Now you play that. And now black, who by the way protected that bishop, so there is never any business with e5, can suddenly increase his pressure on this pawn, simply not allowing white to move the pawns forward. You try to protect and he hits again. White may be reduced to playing f3. And then it becomes the slow developing hedgehog where black feels comfortable. Now, clever move order, right? Economize on the move bishop e7 and hit the white pawns on c4 and then e4 before white can get set. Well, unfortunately for my opponent, this all had been played before, and I had known about this move order for more than 20 years. I was not the one who invented this move, knight d5. The honor goes to my long-departed friend Alex Yermolinsky, who passed away 11 years ago. He was the one who invented this sacrifice. In the early 1990s, he won a bunch of games, I think 3 or 4, with help of this seemingly outrageous sacrifice. No, well, am I absolutely 100% convinced that white wins here? No, of course not. I have my own experience. Tell you a story. Years ago, 1994 US Championship. I didn't play well at all. But somehow it was a long tournament. I was able to recover enough to get in a share of 4th, 5th and 6th places. Why was it important? Because at that time, the United States had 5 qualification spots for the interzonal. Mind it, interzonal. This is how long time ago it was. The interzonal was supposed to take place in 96. It never did. But we didn't know at the time, right? So the 3 players, Joe Benjamin, Alex Shabalov and myself, were to sort it out, well, who's the odd man out. And we only played each other once in this thing. And the time control was 15 minutes per game, straight up. No delay, no increment. Mind, that was 94. I think we played with analog clock. So, first game. I have block against Benjamin. He plays the Trampovsky and just crushes me like a bug. Steps on me and, well, there was a little pool of ugly discovered liquid. That was all that's left of me. Okay, what do you do now? It's a 3-way competition, right? Okay, it's enough to finish second, but it was a must-win against Shabalov. Surprisingly, he went into the hedgehog. Well, he plays a lot of other openings, obviously, and I was pleased to see it. So I thought I had more experience. And then this thing, he had this move order, knight d7, queen c7, because he expected me to play rook e1. He saw me playing that before. And now I play the Wojtkiewicz sacrifice. So Shabalov answered with knight e5. That's his style. He won't back down and defend it. We got this position, which is sharp, but I believe it's better for white. Eventually I won this game. Alex made some mistakes and no, I put myself in a great position because then Shabalov had a must-win situation against Benjamin. He came close, but ultimately it was looking to be a draw, but Alex, since draw would not help him, then he ended up losing that game. And therefore, Benjamin and I grabbed the qualification spots, which turned out to be many years later were not for the interzonal, but the new inaugural World Knockout Championship held in Groningen, Holland, at the end of the 1997. Yeah. Of course, I remembered how I got there, so I invited Alex to be my all expenses paid companion for the tournament and my second and helper. We had a fun time, although I got eliminated quickly, so it was short. But anyway, so that's the story. Now we fast track to this. Now I spent, maybe I spent about 10 minutes playing knight d5. I knew all along that I was gonna play knight d5, and it's not a sign of disrespect to my opponent. I would play this against anybody. Simply because I believe that white should not let black get away with his tricky move order. If I go passive and if I do stuff like b3, well, my bishop will end up on b2 and it's not energetic enough. That then I cannot attack. Then I have to maneuver. And besides, who knows, maybe black can play b5. Lose knight. So there is really no way for white to get a comfortable position. I mean, almost any move you choose here with white, then it's gonna be black who benefited from his move order. So as a matter of principle, no, you have to play knight d5. Well, king d8. That goes along the games that Wojtkiewicz played. Now check. No, you cannot tolerate this knight. If you go over there, later hoping to exchange this knight with knight e5, then two things can happen. Number one is bishop g5. Look out. I take, right? No time to do anything else. Then I do check. The king is caught in crossfire. Knight back, and rook mates. No, wins the queen. So it's one move, bishop g5. Another move, which is also quite good, is to play b4. Because in reply to... Yeah, b4 is also possible. Okay, let me check my notes here. Yeah, similar idea. No, this is not very effective because there is always bishop h3, right? Plus white can support it with b5. And if takes, no, it's similar to the game, breakthrough. So anyway, Ray took and he played knight to c5. So unfortunately for him, he could not put the knight on e5 because it's simply captured. The d6 pawn is pinned. Yeah, wind up old clocks, you know. Well, I still have some of them, old ones. Use it for practice, you know, for young players. You know, you give them expensive digital timer, well, it's gonna end up, you know, well, broken on the floor, you know, pieces. So, anyway. So knight c5, and now this. Now, right, so what helps white to play like this? He only has one pawn for a piece. Clearly, it's the power of the light square bishop and the strong pawn on c6. And black cannot effectively develop. All he can do is a little development move, like bishop e7. But nonetheless, as it happens, he's supposed to play attacking chess. So I wasn't looking for any kind of slow build-up that would begin with bishop e3. It's a plan, actually. a4, a5. Try to get the pawn on a5, and then maybe play bishop b6. But as I recall the games of Wojtkiewicz, the right move is to strike right away. Okay. Possible variations here. Suppose black wants to keep the b file closed. And white does this. And he rolls. I mean, it takes way too many moves for black to solve his development problems. The pieces, they're not really helping a whole lot on the queen side. And the king is in the way, so black cannot connect the rooks. b5, b6 coming up. That's the story. So Ray took. I expected him to play rook b8. This is the line I had the most difficult time remembering. I was walking around, well, Ray was thinking, and I thought, rook b8, what do I do against rook b8? Because if bishop e3, then black can do what he did in the game, and that helps him, if needed. So I thought, how do I intercept this file? Then it came to me, indeed. Wojtkiewicz already played this. Give up the pawn on c5, ignore it. Just ignore it. Oh, the plan, of course, is to play Spossky trades, right? This is the plan. Sack the bishop and mate him on b8. How do you like my plan? Probably rook b8 doesn't defend. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure black can defend at all in this whole thing. No, well, it's luck, right? So I get a low-rated opponent, the white pieces, and he walks in a maybe forgotten line, thinking that he will outsmart me with the move order. And arguably, well, since Wojtkiewicz is dead, well, maybe I'm the one who knows the most about this line now. Just bad luck for Ray Kaufman. So he plays d5. That was not gonna help. Now it's crushing. Bishop f4. That's why it's better not to put the bishop on e3. Well, so in case of d5, black actually eliminated the most powerful bishop, and he has some hopes of attacking the pawn on c6, but he always comes one move short. So it's a great tempo. Now, somebody played this against Wojtkiewicz, but no, well, there is no checkmate, but obviously Alex won easily. Up 2 pawns. Getting e6 as well. Ray Kaufman. I thought he would go here. I was planning c7 and rook to b8. Not a bad plan, right? g5. Rook there. Pawn takes. Queen takes. Queen takes. Rook check. I win. Okay. Easy. He played here. Well, I was able to finish the game with a simple but pretty combination. The pattern is known from some variations of the Catalan opening, where white gets to attack. Rare case, but... No, it's not capturing on e6, because black has enough defenses. Strangely, it's this check. No, if you come up, then this happens to be checkmate. Amazingly, when I played this, Ray took about 2 or 3 minutes to reply here. Well, obviously he realized that he was losing. It was just, he didn't seriously consider king e7. So he played this, and now this is an attack on the rook. And if you move the rook, then it's double attack on the king and rook. So the only way to actually save the rook is to give up the bishop, which probably wouldn't have helped black regardless, because of the terrible position of the king and the strong pawns on the c file and the bishop coming to d6 and yada yada. But the simplest win is this. D7 is the hardest square to mate the opponent's king on, because in the beginning of the game there are so many defenders. The knight on b8, the bishop on c8, the queen, the king, and black plays the knight to f6. He gets like 5 defenders to the square. This is really a rare case, but no, of course, Ray didn't have to accommodate, so he played this. So I won like Wojtkiewicz. I played one last tactical move, hitting that rook because I wanted the d file. And now, anticipating this, check, here, takes, down 3 pawns, 4 pawns in the rook endgame with passive rook. Black simply gave up after the move rook d1. And we have a winner. Haha. Alright, well, I talk about luck, that's always a part of it. I mean, probably there are some margins here. You have to be reasonably kind of within your ability. I don't think that luck would ever help, I don't know, a 2300 player to win a tournament where, I don't know, US Championship. Or a 2400 player to win a tournament like GRENKE Classic, if that person somehow gets there. It's probably too far. But within some acceptable margins of 100 points here and there, that's what it is. No, a combination of favorable pairings and, I don't know, luck with the openings and all that. And, no, it's still possible. No, it's not original. Well, obviously it's nice to win this game, but, well, the credit goes to Alex Yermolinsky. Anyway, now, if you guys think, that I am getting on some kind of high horse and I'm gonna travel from one tournament to another and go to Chicago Open and then the World Open and then the US Open, no, forget about it. None of that stuff. I've been through this and, I'm very pleased to win a tournament outright. Well, I don't harbor any illusions about what would happen if I started playing all the time. And besides, I have my obligations here, my obligations to you, my my listeners here, and that's what I will be doing. Now, I get this question all the time: what happened to your Russian Schoolboy series? Guys, nothing happened to it. I've been working on this great, huge, ginormous project for my Russian Schoolboy series. I recorded so many videos, but just be a little patient, They're being produced now, and you'll see the whole... Save money, by the way. Well, you're gonna get, the whole thing. You're gonna get hours of your resident Russian Schoolboy. But... you allow me to keep the topics and the title a secret for now. What do I think of US Chess Pro League? No, well, maybe we don't have the right platform to talk about this event because it took place on a competitive server. So maybe we're not gonna go into this. Alright, more questions, because I have to round this up. It went for extra half an hour almost. No more questions. Okay, well, I talk about 3 tournaments. It's not easy in 90 minutes, and I showed you 3 games. So I guess, well, this is it. Dinner time. Bye, guys. Thank you for watching.